What's up, everybody? You are tuned into the Elks Call. My name is Scout, aka the rep from Section X.
And I'm Catherine, aka Even Elks.
And today we have a very special guest for you, the former TSN 1260, a producer and a co-host. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Matthew Iwanyk. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you guys finally.
Oh, man, fantastic. We've wanted you on the show for a hot minute now, and we got an action-packed show for everybody today. Big shout out to our live viewers today. Thank you very much for tuning in to the show. Make sure you blow up the chat. Today we're going to give you the rundown. We're going to talk about the Edmonton Elks versus Hamilton Tiger Cats game that we ended up just winning. We just won. We're going to talk about a win.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like, wow. That's damn.
So we're going to reflect upon that in Kathy's quarter by quarter. And then we're going to open up the fan forum. So that's where we talk about hot topics surrounding the Edmonton Elks. And then we're going to also talk about that Ottawa Red Blacks game that's coming up, which is the best possible chance for us to get a home win. So, yeah, Matthew, I've heard you talk on TSN 1260 for over a year now about how the Edmonton Elks have not secured the home win. So I think we're going to be able to dig into that one.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're still talking about this, but maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the one.
It's been over a year, right?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
We're getting close to, like, somebody mentioned it because it was 2019. We could almost say it was half a decade.
Holy, that sounds awful. That sounds even worse.
No, that's the thing. But now there was a missed season. We always have to say that whole 2020 season was gone. But yeah, it's like Canada Soccer's got 2 wins since. The Oilers have a chance at getting a win before the Elks maybe do. Like, they've got to get it done this Sunday. And you got to do it for Terry Vaughan.
Exactly.
For Terry Vaughan, just like Dave Jameson said, our last guest, right? So after we throw down our predictions on that Ottawa Red Blacks game, we'll give you the Edmonton Sports update, and then we're gonna ask Matthew Iwanyk some questions in the more you didn't know. So
to avoid copyright,
to avoid the copyright trademark infringement at 30 Rock. So Catherine, let's talk about that quarter by quarter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was a new one, right? We got a win. That was the Week 11 Edmonton Elks versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah, game number 10.
Game number 10, yes. And that was a completely different write-up that I had over here than the past, 10 weeks. But so we'll start right at the beginning. I mean, this was the second start for Trey Ford, where he shows that he for sure can run. I think we can say that at this point.
Confirmed.
And then, well, as we go through this, I'll just point out little things that I saw or that we saw during the game. I know we saw that really weird 3rd on 3 long throw gamble, right? That what are your thoughts on that? I know seeing that, and I'm like, why did that happen? Couldn't they have kicked it at that point? Couldn't they have done, bring in Cornelius and tried to do a short yardage?
Who's this?
Oh, Game Day Luna has entered the chat.
But she is not a Tiger Cats fan, just to point it out, just because she may look like one. But
yeah, no, Matthew, what do you think of that? Like with the third with them going for a long throw on 3rd down, not putting the faith in Dean Faithful.
Yeah, well, but like when it comes to Dean Faithful, we now just know they don't trust him at all. They don't trust his leg one bit unless they're within like the 30-yard line. It seems like their option is not to send him out there for a field goal, honestly. Like they don't trust him to kicking beyond 40. So in that sense, like that's where it's very college football-esque where you hit this no man zone where you're too close to punt, but you're too far for that field goal. So what do? And you should never actually be at that point in professional football. You should probably have a kicker that could do it, but mismanagement by the management and having a global position having to be your kicker, that's put them in this spot. going for it on 3rd and 3. I don't ever mind going for it on 3rd and short. I do wonder about the deep throws though. Like you need in those moments, like, you only need a couple yards. Just get those yards, get it done, and then continue your drive. That said, it was a great ball thrown by Trey Ford, and Eugene Lewis has to bring that in. Like,
it is. It's a gamble.
Well, that's it. But he's paid all that money to haul those balls, and then when you watch that one, you sit there and go, "Man, that's how you're the highest paid player in the Canadian Football League." So in the end, it works out for them in a sense. Actually was a good throw and a good play call. But like I'm with you guys right off the bat. When I saw Trey Ford going back and then throwing deep, I'm going, what are you guys doing? Just get the 4 yards, get the first down, and let's drive going.
Well, and even then, right? Like Taylor Cornelius. I think we've already seen that Taylor Cornelius can literally just bend over the line, right? I mean, he can just bend over and get that first down, especially if you have 1 yard, even if it's a long yard. You're also paying Taylor Cornelius X amount of money to be a third string quarterback. So go earn your wage. And I mean, Dean Faithful being in that global position, like you said, mismanagement, that was a really, really good term. Having a global position taken up at that position and being hamstrung. You're hamstrung. You're bottlenecked at that point. So very very good point, Matthew.
Yeah, it's just like you bet. Yeah, it's just one of them where like Chris Jones didn't think about the global position at all, and so then he had to find a global and ends up being his kicker. And we don't talk a lot about kicking unless things are going bad, and then you realize very quickly that no, that's a very important position. Those 3 points really do matter.
Definitely. Well, we do see a sack in there with Niles Morgan forcing a 3rd down for the Tiger Cats.
My player to watch, by the way, on the last episode, I will say that was Niles Morgan was my player to watch. Anyways, go ahead.
And I mean, that forced the 3rd down for them, and then of course they have Legio coming in. So I just want to get that out of the way because I know it was a constant point throughout the entire game with Legio just completely missing those field goals. Like, what's your take on that? Was it just the wind? Was it the wind? Was it?
I don't know. All I know is I have him in my CFL fantasy league, and I barely won, but he almost cost me the weekend. And I wanted the Elks to win the game. That's what matters most. But part of me also is going, "Come on, dude! At least make one of those field goals."
And I mean the jokes, right? The jokes on social media. No leg Legio.
Yeah, I know.
I think I think he made about 1 the whole game.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He did. And okay, so we finished up that quarter with number 7, former Tiger Cat Stephen Dunbar catching that bullet over there for a touchdown. So that was I still think that maybe he had a point to prove. Dunbar came to play that game, and he definitely had some great plays. So
really hasn't had that game for the Elks this year that you were expecting, and he finally brought it in that game. And whether that took it the Ticats to motivate him, the going up against them, we finally got that game from Dunbar that you wanted once you saw the Elks sign him in February.
Exactly, and what I think is also interesting about that as well is Geno Lewis, right? So Geno Lewis comes back. Dunbar now has competition at that spot. And it's not really competition. Everybody's in it for the same goal, right? But as far as targets go, Geno Lewis should be the number 1 target, if not at least 1 or 2, and Dunbar is probably number 2, let's be real. But Dunbar balled out in that game. You could tell that he was playing with a chip. Trey Ford, right? Trey Ford, I'm sure we'll talk about him in a moment, but he'd even said he had played a lot of games in that stadium in high school. Right. So a couple of guys had those fuzzy, warm feelings in that building. Couple that with Hamilton Tiger Cats not exactly being still air right now. Yeah, it was a good first quarter. It was a good first quarter.
I mean, we finished in the lead, so we took that and went for it, right? So coming into the second quarter, we had Dean Butler getting that touchdown on the Tiger Cats end, and it came really close to bringing it to a tie, but once again, what do you call it? No leg Legio.
Yeah.
Missed that one, which is good for us, of course. And then that's where we came across that second and short yardage situation with Cornelius. And he went ahead and surprised everybody when he threw that trick. He completed that trick play and he threw that long ball to AC Leonard. Who, goes beyond his defensive lineman duties and goes and receives one-handed.
And isn't it crazy that one of Taylor Cornelius's best plays of the year is a trick play to AC Leonard, right? And Taylor Cornelius in that position. Sure, pressure can be a great thing. Pressure can be something that you can overcome. But when you're overpressured, you can't function. And Taylor Cornelius, in the position that he was a starter, he was overpressured. Edmonton Sports Media, let's be real. Everybody isn't easy on any starting quarterback unless they're doing amazing. And I think that's most markets, but especially in Edmonton where you are a flagship franchise or at least one of the greatest franchises in the CFL. Yeah, people care. You're in the West as well, right? The West is a very big contributing factor. So for Taylor Cornelius to bust out a trick play and to have one of his best plays of the year and to utilize him as such is amazing to see. What did you think about that, Matthew?
I think the last part, to utilize him as such, is the big thing that I took from was that, like, one of the things that was a problem with Steve McAdoo for so long was just there was no creativity. And like, how often did we ever see trick plays? How often did we ever see them do something that caught you by surprise and you went, oh my God, where's that? Like, I expect that teams doing that to the Elks based off these last years, not the other way around. And when you see him throwing that ball, you're going like, is this the right team we're looking, or is my like TV color off or something? Because that's not the Elks under Steve McAdoo. And Jarius Jackson, his second game as the OC, you sit there and go, okay, like you're trying something, especially like on a second down. You have another down if you need to go for it later.
Yes.
Pull something out, try something there if you want. And they did it for once. And, you've already talked about how, Cornelius with a great throw there and, puts it just like it maybe, if it's a little further, AC Leonard can't pull that in, but it's also in a spot that only AC Leonard could go catch it and not the defender to make a play on it. And that's where, to me, it was a really good throw and great catch by the former receiver, AC Leonard. But it was like, I want more of that from the Elks because being unpredictable is the best way to go. And like, it was one thing that bothered me last year even was that, okay, Taylor Cornelius is the starter. Why not try to mix Trey Ford in a little bit in the plays or like do different things? Because you got a couple quarterbacks now. So now this year, maybe it's a little reversed. You got Trey Ford out there, but why not try to maybe mix in Taylor Cornelius with something that could really keep the defense on their, on their heels, I guess, if you will. And that's what I really love seeing that play. And I'm glad it worked out for them because maybe that gives them the confidence, like, let's try more things like this.
Oh, definitely. And right after that, you see Cornelius just reaching across and getting that touchdown. And you see it in his face. Like, I remember looking at Scout and he was like, oh, he looks like he's having fun. Yeah. Right? Like, when was the last time that you saw a smile on Cornelius's face? Because he's getting that confidence in that position that he's in at that point and making those plays. And just, you can see the confidence in the team just coming back.
Yeah, and it's got to be a lot easier to smile when you're not having to pick yourself up off the turf every time because of a bad O-line. And instead, you're getting in the touchdown. So he's just probably happy he didn't take any punishment.
No, that's a very, very, very valid point. And I mean, obviously, he doesn't have every single spotlight shining on him. So him being in that position, right, and utilization, that's exactly it. We're paying this guy starting quarterback wage. Let's say with all of the issues that we've had at the beginning of the season on 3rd and 1, how many times could we have used Taylor Cornelius in that position to get the first down or to get the touchdown?
I call him tall boy because he is a tall boy and he can just, fall over and get it.
I hate to go here with this though, but like, imagine if he was in and they actually scored that touchdown in game 1 against the Riders.
Yeah.
And what would have happened to this season?
Right.
Like, what would it like? Because I feel like mentally they just deflated, it seems like, at that moment. And it's carried on to what we've seen this whole season. But what would have been had he been in there and he got that touchdown?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I've heard that a couple times this week. about what if he would have been able to make that happen, or what if the team would have just got it done in those 3rd and 1 scenarios or third and goal scenarios. What if they would have just did it? Like, we would not be seeing the streak that we're seeing right now. The home losing streak might not exist right now. We would not have gotten to this point, right? So, yeah, I mean, extremely valid point, Matthew.
And that just goes back to just how the game is, the details matter so much. The top teams, they have those details down and they get those points. And the Elks are struggling with those details, and that's why they have 1 win on the season and haven't won at home since 2019.
No, I will definitely I will agree. I think we agree.
I can't say anything against that. Well, right on the second, we saw another big forward completion to Dunbar, who of course turned it into another touchdown. Saresna and Gainey had a couple of sacks, which resulted, of course, in us getting the ball back, which leads us to the 3rd quarter and that dreaded hour-long weather delay. And I think everybody was kind of wondering, like, is this the curse? Is this the curse of the 3rd quarter, Alex? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. There's just something against us. And we start off by seeing a little bit of the usual stuff that we see with Ford getting sacked, and McAllister doing a return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
But thankfully for us, there was that penalty
flag
that with an illegal block that made sure that penalty didn't count.
So the touchdown didn't count,
yeah. We get another Saresna sack. Saresna sack. But not much else happens during this quarter. And I would say that's a blessing, really, compared to some of the 3rd quarters that we have seen in the past.
Totally. Well, and I mean, we go in with a 12-point lead, right? Mm-hmm. So the 12-point lead, we've seen this scenario with the Elks before. We go into the 4th with the 12-point lead. Yeah. So going into the 4th with the 12-point lead, you still have that doubt, but we somehow survived the 3rd quarter, right? Surviving the 3rd quarter. How often have we talked about extremely bad? And we're not just talking like anything close to this last game. The 3rd quarter in this last game was extremely mild in negatives, as opposed to every single other game we've watched this season. What did you think about that 3rd quarter, Matthew?
Well, I think, one of the things I think comes out of that, which maybe this ended up looking back on it, hindsight 2020, that, helps the Elks, is I wonder how much of a factor the delay had on both teams. They didn't get to come out. They weren't sharp, because they had to rest for so long. They had to then get amped up for that moment. So, in that situation, I guess you want to be the team. And if we're looking back in the lead, because if the team trailing is struggling to get things going because of such a delay, well, you at least got those points. But yeah, like the 3rd quarter has just been a killer. How many games can we point to where it's just like close at half and all of a sudden, okay, we're not watching the 4th quarter or caring because they're done. Toronto at home, it happened. I know Hamilton, I think at home it happened a few more times where that 3rd quarter just kills this team. And it's just, you then know that like the 4th quarter is not going to be that significant because the Elks are completely out of it. So for them to come back, and yeah, like offensively, I'm sure they were nervous that they weren't putting up points, but defensively, knowing that they were still stopping the Ticats and weren't allowing to make the comeback, that probably gave them a little bit of confidence going on the 4th, going, okay, maybe we could do this one tonight. Maybe we can go out there and finish this off. We just need a couple plays here and there, and then we won't do what we've done in the weeks past or the week prior where they blew the 22-point lead. But yeah, I wonder if that delay did help the team just because it hurt the Ticats.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Well, and I think what's funny is one of our followers on Twitter, they had said, because there's a rain delay, maybe where we're supposed to play the 3rd quarter, maybe that's just going to pass on, and we don't have to play that usual time slot. Maybe we're going to play like we play in the 4th, and then maybe we're just going to play good for the rest of the game. So
they need to get to overtime every time because apparently they play well in that last little bit.
Right. Yeah, that's what they got to do.
No, that's exactly it.
But going into the 4th, I mean, we do definitely see a lot more creative plays by Ford, Niles Morgan, and AC Leonard sack. So that was a really good one. And of course, Kevin Brown had a couple of really good runs, which brought us close enough for a field goal, which us to the final score of 24-10.
Yeah.
And I mean, at this point, one of the things that I definitely wanted to point out is that, sure, we got the win, but was it a good win, right? There were, on the Hamilton side, there were 3 missed field goals. There was a missed convert. There was a penalty that negated the touchdown, and a little sad field goal at the half. Really, if all of those things hadn't happened, the Tiger Cats would have had a lot more points.
Yeah.
Right. So, in my opinion, we won, but I still would have liked to see more improvement.
Yeah, luck, right? Luck. I think we do need to acknowledge that the Edmonton Elks did get lucky on that last game. They did indeed. A bunch of missed kicks from Legio. He was the one getting, made fun of for the night instead of the Edmonton Elks, which, hey, we'll take it. But at the same time, had he made those, they still wouldn't have the win, but they would have given themselves a better chance. And when your team has a better chance to get the win, they play with that little bit more. They play with a little bit extra. So I do think that we got a little bit lucky. Same time, the Edmonton Elks really need some wind in their sails. Matthew, was it luck or did they play? I guess they played good enough to win, but
a pretty good game. Yeah, they weren't poor really in any spot. Ultimately, the defense that's bending and not breaking and giving up field goal tries, you take that all day, every day. And we all thought about the Mark Legio. If he makes those kick, what happens? But also, I'll turn this and go to the positive maybe for a little bit, Elks, and go, what if Eugene Lewis catches that third down throw from Trey Ford? What if Dylan Mitchell catches the third down throw from Trey Ford? The Elks are both times within 5, if not within the 10-yard line, and they get 2 more tries at field goals, which would be potentially 6 more points or 2 more scores. So when a game that comes to the fine details, if Legio makes those kicks, yes, but also if the Elks just haul in 1 or 2 of those catches, they're in the position where they've blown out Hamilton even more. So I think the Ticats aren't a good football team. We know that. We know the Elks aren't exactly a great football team either. But in that game last week, they played a good game. And I think for a team that was looking for their first win, I'll give them the win. I'll give them the good job, boys. You did it, as opposed to, yeah, you did it, but maybe there's a few things, I'll this week I'll be a little more critical if they win a one like that. But last week I'll go, no, you got your win. Let's be happy.
Deserve it.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time in many years that I've heard Matthew Iwanyk give him the good win. That's amazing. That's amazing.
But yes, we have the next game on August 27th against the Ottawa Redblacks. And of course, we will see Terry Vaughn become the 42nd player inducted to the EE Wall of Honor.
Wall of Honor.
And the Elks will also celebrate the 20th anniversary of the 2003 Grey Cup Championship team. So we do have some transactions. We have a global offensive lineman, Toby Letman, that has been signed. So that's an interesting one, I think, in my
filling
opinion.
in the global spot if Dean Faithful is injured.
That is an interesting one in my opinion. And injuries, of course, we did see that Dean Faithful was out of practice today, so we don't know exactly.
Have another kicker.
I know.
In Jake Julian, we trust.
He's only a punter, though, so
I know.
He's gonna have to fill in.
You know what? I would say at this point, based on his range, realistically, I mean, the Coffin Corners have been decent. Jake Julian, he's pretty good at punting. He gets us the rouge when we don't want it sometimes. He's not bad. But let's be real. That guy's got some range on him. If you got to put him out at the 50, I would trust Jake Julian over Dean Faithful most times, I would say. So I wouldn't mind seeing Jake Julian get out there for the kick. Same time, also don't want to see that. So we are hoping that Dean Faithful makes it back.
Definitely. There are no other injuries on file as of now. So we'll see what happens in the next few days.
Yeah.
So what are your predictions for the next game?
I say this is where it's tough with this team because I remember last year, so many games where they would win on the road, and you'd be like, this team's figured it out. They're coming back home, and they just got to keep playing this way, and they're going to get the win. And then the team doesn't come out at all like the team that it was the week prior, and they find a way to lose. And the one I really remember, they did back-to-back against Ottawa in August last year. They go to Ottawa, they get this win. Taylor Cornelius is moving with his legs. You're thinking, here we go. They've got this. Then you come back, and the Red Blacks put up a bunch of points in the first half and then get that victory. And so I want to see her and be like, after last week, okay, I could go with these thoughts as to like, this is how the team's going to play. But I'm also very scared because the history has shown that they don't want to do that. And I'll just look like a fool with my predictions. Look, defensively, for the most part, this team has been really good this year. When you get up 22 points, I'm going to look at the defense in that one and go like, come on, you got to try. I know it's Winnipeg, but you got to try to find a way to close that one out. Stop taking the penalties. Offensively, I think what we've seen from the last 2 weeks is Trey Ford's getting a lot more comfortable. Trey Ford is feeling, like the game is like, it seems like it's slowed down for him enough that he's finding able to make his plays. He's got a nice throw to his balls that he throws. He uses his legs quite a bit. So I think, and then with Jarius Jackson as well, I think he's even like with as we talked about with that, the gamble with, well, not the gamble, but the trick play with Taylor Cornelius, maybe he's getting a little comfortable too now calling the plays and what he's bringing to the table each week at practice with the guys. But in the end, like Dustin Crum could run the football. So could Trey Ford. Like, I think this is a game we're going to be really watching those linebackers, especially, and going, how much are they spying those quarterbacks? Because this might come down to which legs of these quarterbacks is going to be a little bit better. But we might be in for a show athletically from both quarterbacks.
No, that's an extremely good point. The Crum back, right? I was thinking about that factor today. He can definitely use his legs. He will do the same thing that the Edmonton Elks are trying to do to Ottawa, as Ottawa is going to do to the Edmonton Elks, right? It's going to be very interesting. I think it will be a little bit of a quarterback shootout. The expectation is for a win. Let's be real.
100%.
Edmonton Elks fans, media, everybody's not only thirsty for it, but this is what we said when we lost that game against Hamilton here at home. We looked at the calendars and we said, realistically, it's Ottawa. Ottawa's the next game, and that's August. And that was a month or two ago. Life has been depressing as an Edmonton Elks fan in Edmonton when you have to pinpoint when you're going to get your next home win. And luckily, the Edmonton Elks have created progress. The bye week changes seem to be doing amazing. Jarius Jackson, creative play calling, like you mentioned earlier, Matt.
Very much so.
He is indeed pulling off creative plays, and his schemes are different, and we're seeing trick plays again. We tweeted the instant we saw a trick play because we had been waiting. I was telling Catherine, I was like, 2016, 2017, like we saw these sweet trick plays, and Mike Riley, I was at the BC game where he threw it to Almondo Sewell, and Almondo Sewell was like running it in, and I think he either got a touchdown or a first down. Either way, it was a huge play. And Catherine's like, I don't know what that is.
I have never seen one of those.
So it's nice to see the return of that. But in my opinion, expectations win. If we don't win, I feel bad for all of us.
Yes. For myself, I'm going to say a win. Just because I want to see a win at home for the first time ever. So, that's my expectations. I just want it. I want it to happen. It has to happen.
And honestly, like when you look at with the way they've played the last couple of weeks, taking away, giving up the comeback 22. Well, they still played pretty well in that first half against Winnipeg. If they could play that way, you look at the schedule of the next few, which is Ottawa, Calgary, Saskatchewan. They're winnable. Like you all of a sudden could pick up a few wins, and then we could see where this team is going into the last few weeks of the season. But they're winnable games. But to do that, to start talking about the Labor Day sets and going, okay, can you either split or take both against Calgary, who aren't very good? You got to get that win against Ottawa. Because if you don't beat Ottawa at home, then it's like, well, who are you going to beat at home? Like, we could look at Calgary and Labor Day rematch, but at some point, it's like, why would we ever predict the Elks win at home again? If they can't do it again this weekend? Because look, they have no connection to 2003. These players have no idea who Terry Vaughn is or anything. I hope someone tries to talk them and go like, this is the history of Terry Vaughn and the 03 team, and give them like, I know this is what you're playing for. Like, you're going out there and these are the guys that came from before you. And there's a lot of people that are going to be in the stands because of these guys that have been suffering for a long time because this franchise hasn't won for a long time. You got to really step it up for those games to give the fans a little extra something for the 03 team, for Terry Vaughn. And what a sweet way to finally be able to say, you got that home win.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 110%, especially when Ricky Ray, he was just in the house. There was a bit of a celebration for him, and once again, the 03 team, and a lot of the celebrations already this year for really a historical Edmonton Eskimos team. And a great way to tie together the past and the present, to tie together the two brands. You get a win on those nights, celebrating those the past players. You're celebrating the legends. You're celebrating the old achievements. Get the freaking win. Get the win on those nights.
Yeah.
I like what you said there. Well, that's it. Like, I never even thought of it that way, but it's also a great way to just transition over. There's a lot of people that still want to quote unquote and be like, oh, they'll never win as the Elks and all that stuff. But to finally get that first win, it's almost like the passing of the torch. You know, we honor one of the last great teams of this franchise. You know, that era of 03 to 05 was unbelievable. They get their night, but then also now this is the new era of this franchise, which is Elks football, which is finally, okay, that home win, and see where Trey Ford and this team could go over the next 10 years, let's say.
Totally.
I love that.
No, we do got to bridge it together.
Yeah.
That's something that they've been trying to do, and goes back to the name change, goes back to every other argument around this team right now. Winning changes everything.
It does.
You need to win. And
well, if you look at the history of this team, like, I know people could go to like the recent history and go name change, all these other things of why they're not, you know, the fans aren't fully going. But really, this team made playoffs for 34 straight years, ending in 06. You go since 06 to now, which is 17 seasons or something like that. They have, I think, 3 or 4 playoff appearances in the West.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's not enough. I think they've only had like 3 home games in the playoffs in 17 years. And when you're used to being in the playoffs for 34 straight years and at every year having at least 1 home game, and now we've gone 17 years with only 3 of them, that's the issue. This team's got to start winning. Winning does fix things, but it's not a 1-year win. You got to win for like 3 or 4 straight years. And that's part of the shame that 14-15 era like was only 2 years, that couldn't continue a little longer, because I think you would have seen people come back a little bit more. But like, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters in sports. It starts with winning. People want to watch a winning team, and then everything else comes from there.
No, 110%. We're all there for the wins. I bought season tickets because of the wins. I bought season tickets because of the 2015 Grey Cup. And I mean, I also just love being at the games, but the 2015 Grey Cup was the decider for me. But speaking of people, John Kirby in the chat did ask, before we go into the fan forum, he did ask, do you think we'll have a big crowd on Sunday, or will it be what we're used to this season so far? Which I will go ahead and speak on this real quick. The crowds are still decent considering the product. It could be a lot worse. We are seeing, the 20 to 21,000, somewhere around there in the average. But Matthew, do you think we're going to see a big crowd?
So have they had only one other home Sunday game? Like, the game against Toronto was a Sunday. I don't think they've had another home Sunday since.
No, preseason. What was preseason?
I can't remember.
That was a Saturday.
Okay, yeah. So then, yeah.
And I think because, like, it's tough to judge. Like, there's 2 things I would say. One is, I know under Victor Cui, there were a lot of tickets that were sent out in the market that weren't, that they papered the city with some tickets. And I believe since he's been, that they parted ways, that's kind of been rolled back a bit. So I don't know how many tickets are being thrown out there for this game. So that might affect it a little bit. But the Sunday is the one that I find interesting, because it's, do people come out to Sundays or not? That Toronto game, there was quite a bit of people that did come out to that game. It was the second game of the season, and there was a fair amount. I remember going to FC Edmonton games last year, and I went to quite a few. And the second half of the season, they played a lot of Sunday games at like 2 or 4 in the afternoon. And those are their best crowds that they have. It seems like on Sunday night, sometimes it's the easiest to get your weekend's over. You're getting ready for the week. It's a chance to, still take your kids out to something because it's not too late. So that's where I think we could see a decent crowd because the weather is supposed to be nice and people do like to sometimes do things on a Sunday night. But this is an experiment the CFL has been doing this year with these Sunday games. And I think they're working really well on TV. I think they're getting some really good numbers.
Mhm.
I guess I'm intrigued to see what they do attendance wise though, because, if they do well, then I think, okay, people would love to go on Sundays and you keep doing that. But I also understand that if they don't do well, then some people might go, well, it's Sunday at 5. I'd rather just watch it on TV at home. So I didn't really answer John's question there. Was it John, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, John, sorry. But in prediction, but like it's just, I don't think we have a good enough sample size to judge a Sunday at 5:00, whether that's going to be good or not. And I don't think the 03 team is going to bring out enough people to make a sizable change of like, yeah, no, we're going to have 25,000 people there because so many people want to come out for Terry Vaughn in 03.
Right. And John said it's okay. So he's all good. But yeah, more importantly, right, with Terry Vaughn and the 03 team, I do think there will be some hype behind it. I think more importantly, like you said, it's people wanting to do things on a Sunday. You're finishing up your week and you're starting a new one. Sometimes you want to be a hermit on a Sunday evening. Sometimes you don't. More importantly, football is a Sunday thing.
Yes.
And universally, right? Like you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, right? Yeah. So you're gonna be watching preseason. I'm sure you watched them lose that streak there the other night.
No, I don't watch preseason. I don't watch preseason sports, especially football. Especially football. It is the worst football there could be played. I will not subject myself to those. Nope, not watching it. I saw the highlight of them losing, but that's as much as I saw. I don't need to watch preseason. I'm good. For NFL, call me the week after Labor Day. I'm good to go.
I was thinking of you when I was watching it, and it was one of those things that was on in the background on the TV, and I was like, yeah, like I'll flick it on. The one player, he had a quote, and he was like, yeah, like it's preseason. I don't care about preseason. Nobody who
it doesn't count.
Who gives a
preseason doesn't count?
Yeah. So
there's a 24-game win streak in the preseason.
If it were the Edmonton Elks, I wouldn't, because usually the big superstition is if you're perfect in preseason, your team is going to suck in the regular season. And I think that's for whatever reason, there's a weird superstition behind that. So I stick to that, and I do not. Even Green Bay Packers, I have not really been even paying attention to Jordan Love. So, yeah.
You're just sad that Aaron Rodgers is
gone, so the fan forum, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and
change the subject.
We're going to jump into the fan forum. So, guys, blow up the chat on this one. This is a segment where we are going to talk about some hot topics surrounding the Edmonton Elks, and our live listeners will get to chime in on each topic we discuss. So if you have comments on anything that we're talking about here, please throw it in the live chat, and we're going to get to it after each question. So question number 1, our first topic is on the change at President and CEO. Rick Lalacheur was brought in to replace Victor Cui. Do you think this was the right move? Now, before we answer this, Lalacheur was the president and CEO from 2002 to 2011, so he has been in the spot before, 2 Grey Cups during that time, and he's come out of his second retirement. So he's almost as bad as Tom Brady when it comes to retirements.
Coming back.
Yeah, I mean, self-described CFL lifer, but he cannot fix everything that needs fixing in how many months do we got until 2024? We got like 4 months, right? So Matthew Iwanyk, what do you think? Was this the right move?
Yeah, it is. Rick Lalacheur's the guy to bring in 100% because there's a lot that he brings to the table. One is, in the CFL circles, in the big picture, he's known and respected. So from a league perspective, a head office perspective, they know that someone is in charge, that they know what he's going to bring to the table. Like the last few president's hires, Len Rhodes, Chris Presson, Victor Cui, no connections to the Canadian Football League, nothing in terms of that. So, you bring in a guy that is known in that sense. And two, then he also knows this franchise, because you've just pointed out his resume with this team. He had been here for a long time. And so he knows what this franchise was at its peak. He'll be able to come in and try to fix what needs to be done when it comes to getting back on the right track for this franchise, which is, being the gold standard both on and off the football field. And also, like, with his recent time in BC, one, he knows the Canadian football as recently. Like, it's not like he's been out of the league since 2011. But two, BC was in the same spot the Elks are in right now, where there's a lot of question marks, a lot of conversations about the future of the franchise. Now, BC was outright looking for a new owner, so he helped try to find that new owner. Here, I know TSN's Dave Naylor said he's going to be in to look at all options for the future of this team, which might include private ownership. But he's a guy that has recently done that. So from that whole perspective, the respect he has, the resume he has, the knowledge of the league, the team, the franchise, the city he has, it's the right interim hire. It's the right person to just put in charge of the ship until you find someone else. And the other part to Rick that I know is Rick's a very strong guy. He doesn't take crap from no one. Right. And that was one of the reasons why Ed in BC worked, or could have worked, is that Ed Hervey needs a nice, strong boss ahead of him. So does, I believe, Chris Jones. Chris Jones needs someone that could put him in his place. Chris Jones needs someone that every so often, if he comes up with an idea or tries to do something, tries to be Chris Jones, someone will get in his ear and not be afraid and go, no, you can't do that. And Rick Lawlisher is one of those guys who won't be afraid to look at Chris Jones and tell him to basically screw off or whatever it might be. So for all of that Rick brings to the table, to me, like, absolute right hire for that interim position for the Edmonton Elks. There's almost no one else you can go with. Alan Watt's a guy that's in the organization right now. He's been around for a long time. He served between, I think, Preston and Victor Cui. So he could have handled that, I think, as well. He could have ran the ship. But Rick Lawlisher has done it so well that, I don't think they made a wrong choice here. I think this is the right thing to do till they get to the next guy.
Well, and it's really interesting that you bring up Alan Watts, right? Because, like, with the whole Lawlisher scenario, sure, Alan Watts could have ran the ship, and a lot of people were turning to and looking at Alan Watts to go ahead and right the ship. But I don't think he wants to. I don't think that he's in that position in his life where he necessarily wants to take on that responsibility.
Well, really, you're talking about somebody that is coming out of retirement for the second time.
Well, no, and like, that's Lawlisher. Lawlisher went ahead and did that, right? And Alan's already on the board. Alan's already there in the thick of it. We saw Alan in passing at the Canada Cup kickoff party. He's still very, very involved in the community. He's still playing face, doing a lot of things. I think that for him, it would have been just a little bit too much responsibility when he's already doing a bunch in the background.
You know what? And we probably, we've seen how that goes with Chris Jones when you have too many hats, right? And sure, I mean, what I was pointing out is that if somebody thinks that they've had too much or they don't want to do it, at least, we have somebody that is coming out of retirement for the second time.
Yeah.
That should show something. But I'm personally excited to see what kind of changes experience brings to the table, right? Because just like you said, he's been with the organization, he's been in that role in the past, and he is knowledgeable of the current CFL proceedings and how the organization is run. So
totally,
I definitely agree. It is the right move.
So then, question number 2, you guys here.
Yeah, so the Elks quarterback, Trey Ford, he's done great in the past 2 games, as we've talked about. And it's just been adding fuel to this whole Trey Ford speculation fire, right? So do you think that Stephen McAdoo was holding back Trey Ford?
Ooh.
That's a great question. So we got to get inside the minds of the coaches' room, and I'll say a partial yes, but it's because I think Chris Jones was also part of this decision. I think there's the two of them together. I don't think McAdoo said, I don't want Trey Ford. I want to go with these other guys, and Chris Jones just trusted him with that decision. I think they came to that decision together. And we've heard a lot that Trey Ford didn't have a good practice or training camp this year. I believe he went and worked out somewhere in the NFL this past offseason. So I wonder if that annoyed the team a little bit. But in the end, it's just one of those. I won't absolve McAdoo and say he was holding him back, like he wasn't holding him back, because I think he was part of that. I think his play calling, it wasn't good for any of the quarterbacks either, but I think it's also a Chris Jones thing. I don't think Chris Jones, the guy who's the GM, the head coach, and the defensive coordinator, isn't involved or making a big, his voice being the biggest when it comes to who's the starting quarterback of this team. And I'm a big Chris Jones fan. I love Chris Jones. He's not doing well right now. But when I was a big proponent of him coming here, both before Jamie Elizondo and here. So I am a big Chris Jones guy, but I don't put this mostly on McAdoo. I'll say he's part of it, but this is Chris Jones.
Yeah, you know what? And what I was just thinking about is that maybe it was also on Trey Ford a little bit, because perhaps he wasn't agreeing with some of the play calling that was happening during practices, and he wasn't putting his 100%, because that was the whole thing that Chris Jones said, right? He needs a little bit more training. He's not performing as well. He's not going to go to QB1 because of those reasons. So if Trey was not 100% in with Stephen McAdoo's play calling, and he was also going against that in some way, perhaps that also had a lot to do with.
Well, just to jump in on that part, what happened after the game against Winnipeg? He made the comments where he said, he wasn't happy with how that they became a little too conservative in the second half. Like he openly called out, a little bit of the play calling. So there might be something to that as well. That if in his first start he's doing that, what has happened over the last couple of months at practice that might lead to maybe that is part of what occurred and why Trey Ford wasn't getting the extra looks from Chris Jones and Steve McAdoo.
Well, and to even add more on top of that, there was a comment about, I was listening to, I want to say 630 Ched, Morley Scott, Dave Campbell, on one of their posts there. They had posted up one of their interviews, and it was with Trey Ford, and Trey Ford was discussing how he was talking with Jarius Jackson about plays that he's comfortable with and plays that he's not.
Oh, that was on the Antler Up.
Antler Up on the Antler. Okay, so I was on Antler Up. There you go. Thank you for plugging the source. That was beautiful. But I think what's really interesting about that is there's going to be times where you can pick your job, and there's going to be times where you don't. So how often is that kind of scenario happening behind the scenes? We don't know. Once again, your imagination can run wild on what may be happening, or where the catering's happening, or if catering's happening, or if Trey Ford simply just was not performing over that period. And sure, maybe he was throwing up a bit of a silent protest in the name of the garbage offensive play calling and garbage offensive schemes. We don't know. I'm going to go ahead and call it garbage because we saw the product that was produced over the last year and a half. McAdoo's offense simply was not catering to the players. It was an offense where he was asking the players to cater to the schemes. And obviously there was a lot of players that weren't comfortable with what they were doing, or they weren't performing at what they were doing, or simply put, the film was just out there for way too long because it was a playbook from potentially 2015. We don't know. We really don't know about that one. But that being said, the Edmonton Elks are looking a lot better lately. Question number 3, the Edmonton Elks have not looked this good since preseason game 1, in my opinion. Do you think a home win on Sunday is a realistic expectation?
Kind of bringing it back.
We're bringing it back. Kind of already answered it, but we'll go into
the realistic expectation. You said it was an expectation, but now are we talking realistic?
It has to be. It's Ottawa, right? If we're looking at the Toronto Argonauts were coming back to town. I know that doesn't happen. They only usually come once, but let's say that the Argos were coming with Chad Kelly. Right. That's one where you could go, okay, well, the Elks are going to be the underdogs. The Elks are not the favorites, and this is going to be a tough game. this is the Red Blacks, and they've been losing their games. They couple big wins to start with Dustin Crum, but they've had their losses, and they're not a great football team like the Toronto Argonauts or the BC Lions or the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So right there, like in that sense, this Elks team, when I look at that losing streak, part of it comes to they're just. If again, it goes back to if they score a touchdown against Saskatchewan on that first, second, third, and one, this season goes different because they do have talent. So there are some players on this team. So, right off there, absolutely, it's a realistic expectation. Also, I'll just go. It is the Canadian Football League, and anything can happen in these. There's one reason they say any given Sunday. Well, for once we get to actually use that in the CFL for a Sunday. You've got look what happened to the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the BC Lions this past week, this big upset. So, but now no one was going in thinking it was realistic expectation that the Riders were going to win that football game. But this is the Ottawa Red Blacks, right? So 100%, if you're not thinking this is a realistic expectation, then you must think the Elks are really that bad and the Ottawa Red Blacks are really that good, because I don't know what else you could be thinking in that one. So yes, 100%. Realistic expectation, the Elks winning on Sunday. And I'll actually go so far as everyone should be upset and disappointed if they don't get that win.
Yeah.
That's not one you can walk away and be like, Ottawa just caught them. No. It's about one. We know the streak. We talked about it. We don't need to go into that much more. But also, this is a game that you could go win. So if you don't get it done, we could all sit back and be really upset at this team for not doing it.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I've already gone through the mental motions because we've done this for too long. I've gone through the mental motions and said, okay, what if they lose? Because yes, everything that you've said is correct. We're talking about the Ottawa Red Blacks. Sure, comeback factor, whatever. Doesn't really matter. The team has actually shown progression over the last two games to the point where it's believable. It is believable now. And even when we looked at that date months ago, it wasn't quite believable. It was Ottawa Red Blacks, and we don't even know what's going to happen with this team. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. We don't know what's happening with this team. Now we're talking about change at president, CEO, change at offensive coordinator, McAdoo consulting on the defensive side. Things have changed a lot with this team since we looked at that date last. So now we're finally upon the date. The team has shown progression over the last two games. We should get the win. And if we don't get the win, I've already prepared myself to be very upset, because this would be one of the most heartbreaking losses since 2019. I was there. I've said it. I was there. 2019, October. Brisk October night, great October night. My buddy wore a onesie costume. I remember it all. It was a fantastic night. TSN, flexing. It was awesome. But I have not seen a win since. And I think that does wear on every single sports fan to be in this over the course of 3 to 4 years as an Edmonton Elks fan. This potential win coming up, if we get this win, if we manage to get the freaking win at home against Ottawa, it will be a very, very memorable moment. I don't doubt that people call in sick. I don't doubt that people celebrate this to the fullest, but this is genuinely the best shot in possibly the last year and a half.
Yeah. Well, for myself, I haven't seen a win, as I've mentioned before. So the way I operate on this is no expectations means no disappointment. So I just go in with that.
And that's the thing, is that we've seen this team, we've had a few games where over the years we're like, maybe this is the one, and they find a way to blow it. How many people last game at home were excited because 22-0, oh my God, here it is, and you just get crushed. That it's just naturally believe that you're going to go home disappointed.
Yeah, exactly.
Naturally believe you are going to be hurt, and then if it happens, okay, you were expecting it, but if they win, that's going to be even better.
Exactly.
No, we are in that land now, and we're definitely praying for Sunday. So, Matthew, this is where I impersonate you here for a moment. This is something that happens behind your back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is called the Edmonton Sports Update. The Edmonton Elks have brought on Rick Lawlisher as interim president and CEO. He was last with the BC Lions until 2022 and previously has experience in Edmonton at the same role. The Elks are also welcoming the Ottawa Redblacks to Commonwealth Stadium on Sunday. Kickoff is at 5 p.m. on TSN and 6:30 CHED. The Sherwood Park Crusaders and the Elks Herd have an exciting announcement coming soon. Stay tuned to our socials for this update. And in other Canadian sports news, the Toronto Maple Leafs have re-signed star forward Austin Matthews to a 4-year deal at $13.25 million per year. We're the Elks Herd. You're up to date.
Well done. Well done. Also, love the music. That is a good intro for that stuff. Well done.
Thanks, man. It came with the mixer. I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna go ahead and out our secrets right now, but it works. I wish we're gonna have to work on this for season 2 of the Elks Call. We'll have 1260-esque background music as we're doing it with a little punch at the end.
What do they say? Mimicry is the best form of flattery.
Flattery,
So
yes.
there you go.
Yes, and I do indeed do it in your styling. So thank you, Matthew, for being the inspiration. And of course, if you guys bring that over to Edmonton Sports Talk, which we're going to talk about in a bit, Edmonton Sports Talk, huge deal in Edmonton since 1260, as 1260. But we'll definitely dig into that in a moment. But if you do bring that over, we will definitely cut that segment from our show. You heard me first on the Elks Call. So this is where we have a commercial break, just like your former employer would also have one. We have one here. We're going to talk about our affiliates real quick before we jump into the more you didn't know. So, RoyalRetros.com, throwback jerseys, all sorts of goodies. Over at RoyalRetros.com, we have 10% off over there using code STAMPEDE to celebrate the USFL Birmingham Stallions 2023 USFL Championship. Giddy up.
Yay!
Wait,
Go Stallions!
Yay!
for the Stallions. And then thingsengraved.ca, we'll have the link in the description. Thingsengraved.ca is the official merchandise supplier of Shotgun Sports and the Elks Herd. There's always something on sale over at Things Engraved. The hashtag meat apron, it might be on sale over at Things Engraved. I'm going to go get one when it's on sale.
Me too, for different purposes, not just kidding.
I don't know where this podcast is going, but that's a good endorsement for Things Engraved.
Women can order them too.
And then, so to cleanse those thoughts, over at Lather, LATHR.com. Lather, we're going to cleanse those thoughts with 15% off using code Shotgun Sports 15.
And that's for soaps. If you
It is soaps. It is soaps to cleanse those thoughts. So go ahead on over there. Sandalwood bourbon, that's my favorite scent. Cotton candy, it's great for kids. Go check it out. 15% off. Shotgun Sports 15 over there. No spaces. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is the more you didn't know for trademark and copyright purposes. It's the more you didn't know with Matthew Iwanyk. So, Matt, we're gonna ask you a couple questions here. We want the raw on this. We're excited. We've gone a little bit over. I think we're gonna earmark this one at or benchmark this one at 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah. So give us another half an hour here to dig into this a little bit more, if you are privy. So, Matt, you've had a great career in media, and you've had a pretty big life in Edmonton. Can you please give us your career timeline, even starting with school?
Are we going back to like elementary school, or are we starting in like college?
Like, when I was 5 years old.
And I wanted to be as far as no, we would go with college. I mean,
because I don't know if we want to go all the way back in time.
Yeah.
I'm a product of Nate, radio television program radio, which is Actually one of the top programs in all of this country. They produce a lot of great talent that have come, that have gone on to do great things, not just in Edmonton, but nationally. So it's a great program that they have over there. I took the radio side of it. From that, while working or being in school at NAIT, I then started working at the time it was Team 1260. And at the time we were owned by a company called Astral Media.
Yeah.
So I would go in on weekends and do just some weekend opping shifts. So if you ever listened back in the day on Team 1260 and there was infomercials or religion hour, purity products and religion, I was the guy pushing the buttons to get them to play early in the morning on Saturday and Sundays. And then I'd go do some work with the Bear. And at the time it was Easy Rock, but then it flipped to Virgin Radio and I would do some just opping for them. And then after NAIT, I did a practicum at the station, actually with Jason Greger on his show. And then that transitioned into a full-time job where year one full-time, I did, Bob Stauffer had a show then, Oilers, it's called Oilers now. So it was Oilers Lunch. I always have to remember which one it was. Oilers Lunch, and then I booked the guests for Greger's show. So did that for 1 year. I was a show killer for the first few years. You'll hear this right away. So yeah, year one, it was with Stoff and with Greger. Oilers take that show to 6:30 Ched. The next year we had to replace it. So we added from 12 to 1 Inside Hockey with Dustin Nielsen. We did that for an hour. Then we had the Mark Spector show for an hour after that. And then I kept producing Greger's show for getting guests and stuff. After 1 year, we killed Inside Hockey and we went to the Mark Spector show for 2 hours. And I produced Greger's show. After that next year, Mark Spector show went away. So like constant changes. And then the Dave Jameson show came on board. And I worked with JMO for then the next, it would have been 10 years this October. So we did like 9.5 years together. So that's the on-air part of 1260. So I was always involved with many different shows, but in that afternoon slot, mostly that noon to 2 spot. And then behind the scenes, officially for the last 3 years, I had the title, but for really last 7 or 8 years, I was what would be called the assistant program director. So I was like second in charge. So there was the boss that we had, but they were usually involved, like in charge of all 3 radio stations at the building. I then focused more of the day-to-day of 1260. So I was the APD. It's a de facto boss type thing of that station. So that's kind of, and the time there I had the Green and Gold kickoff post game show where I was on before and after every Elks and at the time Eskimos game. Me and Dusty started that for a couple years. Then Dusty moved on. And then I took over as the host, working with Lieutenant Eric, Hernan Salas, and then ending with Jeff Walker. And then, did that until June 14th of 2023 when they shut down our station at 9:00 in the morning.
So actually, that brings us to the next question. With all of that history that you've had at TSN 1260, can you tell us about that day? Can you tell us about what happened? Not what happened. Day. I know. I want to know about that day. And
no, I could go through it all. Because like also this station, I will say that building. I grew up listening to Team 1260. And I grew up listening to the Bear. So working in that building, was a big deal because I grew up, listening to so many of the people, including like on the Bear, Yukon Jack and Jillian Foote and Paul Brown and all them. And I've become such good friends with a lot of them. But 1260 meant a lot to me since like the station has been on the air since 91, I think it was, or 91 years, I should say. But 02 is when it went to All Sports. And I remember when it went to All Sports. So it was like a big deal in my life. But that day, I don't know how deep you want me to go into it, but I can go really deep.
Bring us from like you walking in the door that morning.
I could tell you, I'll go through it all quickly. Me, Lowtide, and Jameson were supposed to do a show live at the Remax Field for the Riverhawks game that morning. Yeah. So we weren't even supposed to come into the building that day. So I got a message from my boss and Dave, like both back to back at like 8:00, being like, well, the boss was like, hey, you need to call me back. I need you in for 9:00. Dave just said, call me. So I called Dave and we were told, like, he was also told 9:00 meeting. And when you're in radio, as long as I have been, when you're getting the morning call saying be in an hour for a call, at that moment, I'm losing my job. Like, or someone is losing their job. And like, so we're trying to piece it together, but we drove into the building, got there for just before 9. Our general manager called us into her office where we were all sitting there, and then she went and got Lieutenant Eric and Tom Gazzola because they were doing their show. They just went to a commercial break. She went in and said, hey, I need you guys to come with me. And the engineer, his name was Trevor, he'll handle everything from here. Just come with me. And we all went into a room together, and we were told that the station was being shut down, and we would no longer be working with Bell. And then, yeah, they let us go and grab whatever we needed. And the thing we've always said, though, because we kind of knew that day might come, because they shut down a couple of TSN stations a couple of years ago. So we kind of knew, okay, our time, it's limited. We knew we're on the clock. We always said we'd go out for drinks the day we got fired. So after that, we headed to Lieutenant Xera's house. We had a quick drink there, and then we headed over to a Boston Pizza, and we got a bunch of people together and just talked about how we lost our jobs and we weren't working together anymore. So that's what happened that day.
Frig.
Well, that was so sudden, right? Like, what do you do when you're in that position, like Lieutenant Eric and Tom, that they're in the middle of a broadcast and they get taken away and it's done? I think it shocked everybody. I know this guy, immediately he's messaging like, what the hell is going on? What is going on Twitter? Everybody's blowing up, and it was chaos.
Well, and sorry, go ahead.
I was just at least one of those days, like you don't realize how many people want to talk to you that day. Like, I've never texted anyone as many people until that day. It was honestly, it was one of those things where like I would, because we're still trying to process and talk to each other and figure some things out. But I'd take my phone and I'd deal with 5 people and text them back, and then put the phone down for a bit. And then I'd go back and text 5 more people to try to catch up on everyone that's messaging you. But it was like, I think what we learned in the days after and the weeks after is how much this impacted the city. Like, we lost our jobs, and that sucks for us, but we feel really bad for the city because a huge part of people's lives went away. And losing routine, or losing something that, you're just used to jumping in your car, driving to work and throwing on 1260, and losing that, having to replace that, it's very difficult. We could find other jobs. Changing your life, changing your routine, that's hard to do. I've had shows leave me and, go off the air, and it's weird. It sucks. And so like seeing that outpouring of support was one really, nice to see, but also very heartbreaking for us that, we couldn't have that station still going for everyone else.
Well, and even for myself, the best way I could put it is I worked some very extreme hours the day before. Nothing that I can really speak about on air, but I worked some really extreme hours. I went to bed at around like 2 to 3 in the morning. Woke up the next morning, and I was going to be late for work no matter what. I emailed them, let them know. And I jumped. I didn't even jump in my van. I opened up my phone in bed, and I saw that 1260 was shut down. And it was like right at 9 a.m. It was around 9 a.m. when I found out. And I just lost it because I knew how successful you guys were as a radio station. To have the amount of viewers, to have top percentile in shows. You guys were successful. So we're not talking about an AM radio station that nobody's listening to. We were talking about somehow, for some reason, 20 to 30 to 40 to 50,000 to, even daily viewers on any given day. Probably it could have been 100,000 listeners in a day, potentially, depending on what was happening, depending on what the buzz was. But I mean, realistically, you're talking about 20 to 30,000 people every day that are tuning into this radio station. And like you said, rituals. It becomes our ritual. The van is switched on to 1260. It makes it very easy. AM radio for 1440 is coming back. We briefly talked about that before we jumped on the show, but even then, right, the access and the ease of just turning the knob and going to 1440, that's going to be very easy for people. However, you guys captured an audience that is more than willing to jump on YouTube and to view the AM Nasty once again and Edmonton Sports Talk, and we'll dig into that at the end of our
Yeah.
at the end of this segment
Yeah,
for
well,
sure.
and also, I mean, this is gonna sound a little weird, but when it comes to, TV shows or radio stations that are part of your routine, in some way you begin to think of those personalities as something a little bit closer than just a person that you're listening to, right? In some ways, it feels like, oh, it's a friend,
Yeah,
right?
connection.
And it's there is a connection that you form with a lot of this. So suddenly you're taking that away from very many people that are starting their day with this. So it's definitely massive. And I'm so glad that everybody jumped so quickly on different ways to replace that and bring it back and make sure that the whole Edmonton sports in Edmonton doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I know, and I could probably speak for every single one of the people that left, even though we're all doing different things, is that the Edmonton market is so unique in that it's so rabid and it's not like it anywhere else in Canada. I was privy to radio numbers and seeing what's called ratings and all of that. And one of the biggest years or biggest days of any year for sports talk radio in this country is going to be NHL trade deadline day. There's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. Everyone's broadcasting at that time, trying to cover it. And we were always number one in the country. It wasn't even close. And number two in the country was 630 Ched right here in Edmonton, who's competing with us. We're like, no one else was close to the two of us, and we're competing against each other for the listeners anyways. And that just, to me, always showed just how rabid this sports fan base is here in Edmonton and how passionate they are in wanting to listen and talk about it. And there's just no way that, that could just go away and have nothing there for everything. And, it's just like, I guess maybe a little bit of testament to 12-6 and how strong it was is that, it ate up a large chunk of that. And now that it goes away, there's Edmonton Sports Talk, there's 1440, there's Oilers Nation, there's Got You Back with Ryan Rashog. And then what's great though is like, I think we have a city that has like a lot of amazing, great podcasts that also cover everything. There's a lot of great Oiler ones. You guys do an amazing job with the Elks. There's other ones that do the Elks. And like in this city, there's just so many options to catch that sports, and that's just because of how great of a sports city Edmonton really is.
No, totally. And even John Kirby here in the chat, right? The sports landscape on radio is changing so much for him as a season ticket holder with the Edmonton Oil Kings and the Stingers. They don't have a show specifically dedicated to them, but the Oilers and Elks have a couple of shows or segments dedicated to fans and dedicated to the teams, right?
So that just shows like how much
it's a wide open market.
Yeah, it's not even being covered.
No, it really is a wide open market. And hey, we'll throw our name in the hat if anybody does want to have a little bit more of an Edmonton sports talk podcast that is not necessarily Elks based. We'll throw our name in the hat, Matthew. If that opportunity ever comes, we'll definitely be more than happy to jump in on something like that, or even invite you on as well. So, I think that Edmonton sports is something that does need to be focused on. The Riverhawks have been doing well. The Stingers, like they just went to the playoffs. We talked about that a little bit. So Edmonton has a great sports market. We have great fans here. We love sports in Edmonton. We just need to showcase it a little bit more for people. But talking about sports, Matthew, I know that you like a lot of sports. I know that you're a fan of a bunch of teams. What's your favorite sports teams?
The favorite sports teams. Let's go through them. Look, when you're in radio and you're in a city, you always, like, to me, I always believed you don't be a fan of the teams you cover. So, like, for a long time, I wasn't an Oilers or an Elks fan. That said, something changed over the last year or something. I don't know. Maybe it was the losing streak and I really wanted to get in or something. But I'm an Elks fan once again. I always was an Elks fan. I'm an Elks fan once again. So I'm back to being that fan. Still not into the hockey I cover. So I really don't have an NHL team. NFL, you already mentioned it's the Baltimore Ravens. Major League Baseball is the New York Yankees, even though they stink this year. Basketball is the LA Lakers.
Nice.
College football is Miami Hurricanes, and I have a soft spot for the Washington State Cougars.
Nice.
Obviously, I do love the University of Alberta. it always pained me. I never went to the U of A because I always wanted to be a Golden Bear and Panda. Like I always wanted to, like growing up, going to games at Claire Drake and stuff. I always wanted to be a U of A. So it kind of stunk that I had to go to Nate. But I still love the U of A. Like U of A is the one more than Nate. More than
Go Ooks, man. Go Ooks. You got to celebrate those Ooks.
No.
Bears and Pandas still ahead of the Ooks, even though I went to school at Nate.
Thank you.
Where else? Duke Blue Devils for college basketball. Manchester United for soccer. I think that's all the teams.
Nice.
So let's focus on the Edmonton Elks just for a little bit more. What is your favorite memory as a green and gold fan? I know you just said that you're recently an Elks fan, but I'm sure.
I think my favorite memory will probably have to be the 05 Grey Cup game.
Nice.
I think because it was the greatest Grey Cup game I think I ever watched. I remember everything about it because as a fan, it was also so like nerve-wracking to watch it. It was a back and forth game. Tony Tompkins had his kick return touchdown. I actually love the 05 team in general. Their defense was the greatest at the time Eskimos defense I'd ever seen in my life. I never thought I'd see a better one. That said, until 2015, I think that 15 defense was better than that 05 one. But they had such great players. And, you know, the road to that Grey Cup game played into it. You know, Ricky Ray getting pulled in back-to-back weeks in the playoffs. And then he has an incredible game. He has the standard corner throw to Jason Tucker. He hits Mookie Mitchell on that third down play. It goes to overtime. And I think then like the highlight of that game, just the range of emotions I had in that game, there was a play where Anthony Calvillo in overtime, the Elks are up 3, Als have to respond. Calvillo drops back, throws it. It gets batted down into his arms. He then throws it again. And all you see on the screen is the ball in the air. And I think it was Cavill was standing wide open in the end zone for the Montreal Alouettes, or some receiver for the Owls is standing wide open in the end zone. And I'm thinking the Elks lost, or the Eskimos lost. I'm like, we're going to lose this Grey Cup. Like, we're going to lose. And then he drops the football and you start screaming because like, oh my God, he dropped the football. We're still in it. And then you realize it's a penalty to throw the ball forward twice. So the Owls get pushed back and it wouldn't have mattered anyways. And that range of emotion in like 2 seconds was unbelievable. But the 05 Grey Cup would be up there. I was at the 02 Grey Cup where they lost in the Grey Cup. So it was great to be there watching them play, but they did ultimately lose.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like it's going to games. There's just so many of them that have just been excellent. Non-Elks related in 2018 when the Grey Cup was here.
Yeah.
I was helping the radio broadcast. So for the second half, I got to watch the game on the sideline. So I was watching like the whole celebration. I was on there. So that was a pretty cool experience. But in the end, I guess the 2 memories would be like, actually, here's a bad one. I remember when Ricky Ray took over for Jason Moss. I was in BC for a family thing, and he took over, and it was great. Like, who's this Ricky Ray? And he has a great game. They had a couple great games. And then Jason Moss came back from injury, and I was in the Knothole gang, and Jason Moss had a poor first half, and I was one of the people booing Jason Moss as he went off the field because we wanted Ricky Ray, and then Ricky Ray came out. So I do have a memory of booing Jason Moss. But it was for a good cause. It was for Ricky Ray, and I think we all know what happened after that. So so I'll go 05 Grey Cup, watching that one. But then honestly, just going to games with my brother and my dad and just being at Commonwealth, you know, through a good, like, you haven't seen an Elks home win. It's been a long time for you, since 19. But you know, growing up and going to the games between 02 and 05, there was some special memories of that because that team was at another level. And all of those I'll just cherish, walking to the game, watching them, walking home, and more often than not, celebrating a win. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. That's incredible. So moving along from Edmonton Elks fandom, we know that you have a major venture coming up. You, Dustin Nielsen, you guys got Lieutenant Eric in there, and then who's the number 4 in on that?
Tom Gazzola.
Gazzola, yeah, of course, yeah. Okay, there you go, Tom Gazzola. That makes sense. So you're one of the 4 co-founders of Edmonton Sports Talk, a new soon to launch Edmonton Sports platform, which is something we're absolutely thrilled about. Can you please tell us any and all details? And if you have any sneak peek information you can share with us on Edmonton Sports Talk.
Yeah, so Edmonton Sports Talk, it came together in the aftermath of the loss of 1260. Obviously it starts, and the foundation is the Nielsen Show, which was the morning show on 1260 with Dustin Nielsen and Lieutenant Eric. And we're bringing that show back as of September 6th. It will not be 4 hours, though. It'll be 3 hours from 6 until 9. So, but what we're doing is we're building an online radio station in the sense, this world is podcasting. So everything we do, everything we did back at the radio station, it goes up as podcast. Anyone can listen on demand whenever they want. But the thing that made 1260 so great, and you guys are doing it right now, even through this show and your other shows, it's that interaction with your listener. And the only way you could do that is if you're live. You can't do that by a podcast. It's just not going to be the same feel. The fact that you could go read live chats and have it, talk about it mid show like that, that's amazing. And so we're going to do that with live shows. We're going to be live on YouTube. But we also know a lot of people like to, they're having to replace that drive. And, if you're going to throw on YouTube on your phone, that's going to eat up a bunch of data. So we're also going to have just a live audio only stream, which will limit how much data that you're going to use. That is going to be available at edmontonsportstalk.com on our website. If you go there, right at the top, it's going to say live. You could click that and it'll take you to the audio stream. If you look a little bit lower, it'll say watch live. You click that, it'll take you straight to YouTube. It's all going to be just right there. We're also going to have a bunch of Dustin's other podcasts that he does on the show, which is 11 o'clock. We're going to have the Lock Shop with him and Andrew Hustler from Winnipeg. At 12 o'clock, we still haven't announced the full details of this, but the oil stream will be on. We're expanding to 3 times a week. And then 2 Guys and a Goalie will be twice a week in there. If you noticed, I've missed a 2-hour chunk from 9 until 11. That is to come. I don't want to say what it is yet, but me, Dusty, and Eric were at our new space last week, and we're trying to figure out what to do with that. And as we're batting around ideas, we came up with this idea that we really like. We came up with this idea that we think is going to be awesome, and we're really excited about it, and we can't wait to tell people. So that's coming really soon. I don't want to spoil that one yet, but that is coming very soon. So from 9 to 11, we're going to have this really fun show. Hopefully that we'll have planned. Tomorrow, we're going to announce our text line, speaking of the live interaction. So stay tuned to the social media. We got a nice little video, a chance for people to win some things too with that. But the text line is coming. And we're in the work of potentially having an app too. So if
Nice.
one of our website doesn't work, I have an Android, Dusty has an iPhone. You could just go to edmontonsportstalk.com and bookmark it right to your homepage, and it'll look like an app. And if you click it, it opens up really easily. But we're also looking to possibly have an app that will be in the App Store as well as Google Play. So that there's a lot to come in that world. But yeah, it's next year I'll have Elks pre and post once again. We will bring that back. But there's a lot of plans. We're trying to just get back to doing what we know and what we love, which is talking sports, talking Edmonton sports. And with that also, hopefully try to find ways to bring other shows on as well. So we'll start September 6th. We'll get going then. And this is, what you see on September 6th is just the beginning of this. We have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of plans. But we'll build into those plans. We just got to build a good foundation, build something to build off of. And we're really excited about that come September 6th.
Well, and that's amazing to hear, because even John in the chat here, he's asking, he's actually asking a couple questions. So he's asking, what do you think will be different between Edmonton Sports Talk and Sports 1440, the radio and podcast / data side of it? What do you think the difference will be there, Matt?
Yeah. Look, there will be a lot of similarities in the end. We know those guys. We worked with a lot of those guys. Kevin Carius, I've worked with in the past. Love KK. Low Tide, obviously, I've worked a lot with and did a show directly with him for a year. And Gregor, did, as I mentioned earlier, did the practicum with him and stuff. So I know what they're going to bring. I'll say this, like, because each show is different. I think, I'll start with our morning show, the Nielsen guys, and the Nielsen show. They're so different in what they do based in just sports in general across this country, whether radio or podcasting. It's not as much a sports show as it's also just an entertainment show. In their fun and their bits that they do, and it's not always serious. In fact, it's I'd say it's probably more not serious than it is serious at times. Like when they need to get serious, when they need to talk stuff, they do. But they like to have a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
that's one thing that I think separates them from anyone else basically across the country, is that they do those things. And, Dustin Nilsson's one of the most creative broadcasters you will find. There's a reason he's on TSN. There's a reason he's going to be, and he should be, the voice of the Grey Cup on TSN. And those who don't know Lieutenant Eric, he is the secret sauce of that show. He's a brilliant individual. He is so smart. He can get things done. And when you combine those two together, that right there, again, is not something anyone else has. You don't find other Lieutenant Erics. You don't find other Dustin Nielsen. So that's just the foundation of what we do. They'll do great things over at 1440. I know they will. They'll have the advantage that they're on the radio, that it's an easy click over. But in the end, like, some of the things we do is going to be just really fun. We're going to be very laid back with what we do. And one thing we're really driving for is, the city and community. I know Eric spends a lot of time in the tailgates. This year, I've been trying to get to the tailgates a little bit more at the Elks games. We've been going to Riverhawks games and Stingers, and we're always out there. So, like, yeah, I guess for everyone, it's just going to be, you'll have to find whatever you like best. You'll have to sample both. Again, I'm not going to badmouth 1440 here and what they're going to do. They're great people over there. We're just going to do things our way. And which, again, if I'll just explain, it's more laid back, it's more entertaining, it's more fun, and it's serious when we have to.
Definitely. No, and then pure class.
And I will say one more. I'll say we don't want to be an Oilers station.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to be just talking about the Edmonton Oilers.
No.
Because this is a big sports city. The Elks are big. There's Stingers, Riverhawks. People love the NFL. People love baseball and the Jays. People love basketball and the Raptors. We will focus on sports in general. We don't want to just do, as I said, 6-1 is that opening lineup. We don't want to do 6-1 talking about the Edmonton Oilers every single day with maybe a minute or two here. We want to talk about the big stuff in sports in general.
Well, and that pretty much answers what John Kirby, our last question, shutting down the questions after this. But Matt, he was asking you if you're going to cover Stingers and Oil Kings. By the sounds of it, you are.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about it. There is one show I've planned in that we won't have for the start. It'll probably be a New Year plan that we'll look at. It might not be a live show, but probably a podcast form show. As for a specific podcast or shows directly for the Stingers or Oil Kings, look, we're starting this up. It's our own dimes. It's our own money. It's our time. There's only a few of us right now, so we don't have the manpower or the money to do something on every single team, and specifically Monday through Friday for each of those teams. Like, we have to, kind of map out where we can spend our resources and all of that. So to start, yes, we'll cover the Stingers when it's Stinger season. Yes, we'll cover Oil Kings throughout their season. Are there going to be specific Oil King hour or Stingers hours at the start? No. But again, that's just because it's right now really only just the four of us with a few other people helping us out, and it's our money. And we've got to build, we're independent. We're non-corporate. We're trying to do this on our own, ground floor, working our way up. Hopefully over time, we could do more things like that in terms, again, just show specific. But we will find ways to discuss those teams and all teams in the city.
No, totally. And I think that's another reason why we have a bit of an affinity to Edmonton Sports Talk, because we know that you guys are going to deliver Edmonton sports, right? We're not just talking Oilers. Bob Stauffer, credit to Bob Stauffer, credit to Jason Greger, credit to all of these guys that are very heavy Oilers. But the number one reason why everybody instantly missed TSN 1260 was because we were losing our actual Edmonton sports updates. Like even, within the Elks Call here, sure, I do an Edmonton Sports update, but I'm keeping you updated on certain things, and obviously we throw in Riverhawks and Stingers and any Edmonton sports that we can that are semi-major, important XYZ. But as far as actually talking about it, you guys were, even within the ticket giveaways, you guys were having conversations, talking about upcoming appearances, talking about when you were there last. So you're kind of giving a behind the scenes or, in the trenches sort of view of Edmonton sports, which is what people are missing now.
Yeah.
So I think that you guys are going to be delivering a great product here. We're obviously very, very excited. We will be there September 6th, you said, right? Wednesday.
Yes. Dustin on the Tuesday has already committed to his kids to take them to school.
Perfect.
Pushed back our start to the Wednesday.
Oh,
awesome.
Is that when kids start school? Okay. I should
tis the season.
Find that out.
Oh, guys, we ran a little bit over today. We expected this. Matthew Iwanyk, we cannot thank you enough for joining us today on the Elks Call.
Thank you.
I thank you very much for having me. It's I know we talked a little bit at the tailgate, so the last couple of times here, and I'm glad we're able to do this. I'm always happy to talk Elks. I'm always happy to talk some Canadian Football League, and this was a lot of fun for me. And you say it was over, I say we could keep going if you wanted to, but like it's a perfect amount of time, so I'm more than okay with it. This was a very fun Wednesday night for me.
Awesome, man. No, we can't thank you enough. I mean, we try to keep it to the hour mark. I think
sometimes the conversations are just so great.
They're just so good, right? And
I mean, podcasting, you could go however long you want.
Exactly. No way. I mean, to give you an example, Dave Jameson last week was a 2-hour podcast. You are our second longest at 1:35, and for us, we wouldn't change anything. This is exactly how we wanted it, Matthew. So
I will say this: no shame in being second to Dave on that, because Dave's just better speaker, also amazing stories. So the fact that I couldn't catch the 2-hour mark to catch Dave, totally understandable for me.
Well, you had some beautiful insights, and we truly appreciated them.
It's fantastic. You being, you being a current and former media member, Edmonton Elks fan. You eat, sleep, and breathe Edmonton. It's not even green and gold, right? It's Edmonton. So we can't wait to have you back on, Matthew. To our viewers today, our live viewers, you guys are watching right now. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out, Steve Benassi, John Kirby, Steve Backey, and anybody else watching today. Guys, thank you so much for watching our show. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Scout, a.k.a. the ref from Section X.
And I'm Catherine, a.k.a. to Even Elks.
We are the Elks Herd, and that is Matthew Iwanyk. Thanks a lot, guys. Everybody have a good one. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers, everybody.